folks, welcome to the OKD Community Development Meeting for July 25th of the year 2023. And who wants to navigate? Brian, do you want to navigate or do you want me to navigate? It's up to you.
I'll let you go, because I think we're on videos, aren't we, first?
Okay, yeah, all right. Let me share my screen here then, and there we go. Okay, so we have got a couple different agenda items. Please put your name in the attendees section here. And so the first thing is the video series. And so if we go to the OKD Foundation's video series, Brian was kind enough to put all of this into a nice format here and add some notes and update it. And then Timothy added some stuff. So let's sort of navigate through this, and I added some stuff. So let's sort of navigate and see if we're all on the same page, right? So again, the goal is to provide a series of videos that outline the foundations of OKD to use towards general education and helping build community support. And we're targeting September for completion. So Timothy is proposing, I'm going to jump down to what he has here. And this is sort of what we talked about at the working group meeting last week, because he was there, and so he sort of suggested this last week. Does this look about right to folks? So a 15-minute on ignition and butane, and those are the questions that he would answer, the topics he would cover within those, and then 15 on FCOS. Take a look at that for a couple seconds and let me know if you think there's anything that we should put on this or comment to let him know.
Well, I guess my question is, does it mean that your home lab needs to be able to support multiple versions at the same time? Because since he's covering FCOS, SCOS, it almost says that.
So different, do you need to support different versions of FCOS, do you mean? And
yeah,
yeah.
Like some people may have just one computer or one system, and then they have to install it, take it down, you know. It would depend, you know. I would assume you have a nice home lab that can support all this.
So I think one of the things, and this is an interesting aspect of the Core OS system as it's used in OKD, is that basically there's a new, you start out with you start out with a base version of FCOS or SCOS. We'll talk about FCOS for our purposes here. And then changes are made and packages are installed to make it not a version of FCOS anymore. It's like a hybrid FCOS, basically, with some changes to it. And I mean, the assumption is always that the hardware that you started on is going to be able to handle whatever this mutated hybrid version is. And then when you update your cluster, the new versions of FCOS that the nodes get updated to, that you'd be able to handle that. So there is an underlying assumption there, which may or may not be true. Maybe is that something we should flesh out in this? Is that what you're suggesting? Like maybe sort of touch on that aspect?
Yeah, yes, if possible.
Yeah.
So I can know what type of hardware, you know, after I hit this lottery here, you know, I need to get.
Okay. Do you have access to the planning board if you could add that as a comment yourself? That way it's in your own words and
Okay, I'll add it. I'll add it.
Yeah, so it's in the backlog OKD Video Foundation series, and then just add a comment to that item.
Okay. So I don't think, Dwayne, I don't think you need a physical machine for each one of these. I think you can do a lot of this in virtualization or containerization if you're testing it. So you don't need a separate bit of hardware per operating system.
That is true.
Because what we're talking about here is the creating the base foundation image that the OKD nodes will use when you either apply a patch or you boot them from, in this case, when we boot them from installation. So we're looking at how can you debug and how do you understand how the nodes get the version of the operating system that they get when you actually run an install or an update. So this is about the technology that lays down the node operating system. But you can do this all in virtual machines if you want to play around with this technology. You don't need physical hardware. I guess, unless you have anything else, Dwayne?
Well, I think also I understand there's a normal VM, there's containers, and now there's a containerized VMs are out there.
No.
Well.
So what this is about, no matter where you run OKD, whether it's on bare metal or whether it's within a virtual machine or in a cloud environment, this is about how the node, which could be bare metal or could be virtualized, gets its underlying operating system that OKD then manages going forward. So this isn't a manual install. This is when you run the OpenShift install command, how do nodes get their base operating system and how is that then managed going forward? And more importantly, if you wanted to tweak that image, how do all the mechanisms work? So you could go and customize that image if you wanted to, say, add an additional package or install a different certificate or do anything like that.
And I think that's a good point, because that's the purpose of the ignition and butane, where you can change your ignition. So your underlying, so like let's say you're creating a VM, you'll use the FCOS ISO, the base image. You install that, you get that up and running, and then at boot time, when you boot that, it's going to ask for an ignition file. I mean, if we're talking manually, obviously the assisted install and all the other installers API do that automatically. But a manual intervention is you tell it where the ignition file is, and there's a raw tar.gz file that has the very specifics of all the fundamentals of Core OS in it. So it points to that raw tar.gz, overwrites all the whatever it needs to do in the kernel, and then uses the ignition to say, oh, I'm a master, or I'm a worker, or I'm the bootstrap. And that's how it goes about doing it.
All right, well, let's go to the next.
Well, hang on.
Yeah.
The one thing that I want to ask is now whether Timothy covers it or whether we're going to cover it in one of the later sessions. But I think we have to add a little bit about the layering, because that's something that's new that I think we're going to use.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is moving forward. Yeah.
And I don't see that in any of the sections yet. So somebody has to talk about layering in somewhere within this series.
And I don't know. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Jamie. I was going to say, with our new release, there is a pipeline build with layering involved. And so maybe Christian can give a bit of a brief overview when he does the video on SCOS. I know I'm laying it on Christian, but you know, he's really clued up on the layering.
Yeah, we could have Christian, or we could have one of the other Core OS folks. I can think of a couple of the Core OS folks that were sort of part of the initiative to get layering going in Core OS in general, that they might be interested in speaking on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll reach out to Christian and see if he wants to do it or has the time to do it, because he's already going to be doing video stuff for the other aspects. And if not, then, or if we want something more comprehensive, we can reach out to the FCOS folks. Okay, so Larry, do you want to add a comment actually to that, just so that we don't forget Luigi, go ahead and add layering to that.
Yeah, okay. Where should I add it into the?
Just add it as a comment in this OKD Foundation's
Okay,
video
yeah.
series number 38.
Can I
I
ask
don't
a
want to
question,
speak for everyone
maybe?
for their own suggestions. If you think like folks can put in their suggestions, and then if it answers what they're thinking, that's good.
Go ahead, Shireen.
I was going to ask, I saw that there was one of the videos that you were intending to create is about the builds. Are you only interested in the OKD release build, or also the other builds that we are doing? So namely the SCOS one, which is, by the way, we are trying to transition it to use layering.
I think doing it, if you feel that this is my thought, if you feel that the way you're doing it is going to stay somewhat the same for like the next year or two, and there's not going to be major changes in that process, I would say yes. But we don't want to put something out in video that or in a blog post or anything that's like, this is the way we're doing it, and then suddenly, it changes. There is we'll talk about it in a little bit, but there is that blog post that we did have written for us that's now available on the website. That's sort of an overview of the, let's see, where is it? The State of Affairs blog post by Jacob. Christian had Jacob do this, and so it talks a little bit about it, but it's very, it's just a couple of paragraphs basically. So if are we, Shireen, are you thinking that it's going to stay the same? That the process is going to stay the same for maybe the next year or two, or?
Yeah, most probably it will. Are you talking just about the layering, by the way, or about the building process?
The building in general and the layering, as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
The building in general, I think, is more or less stable now that we transitioned to MOC.
Okay.
Now the layering part is still something that we are working on. So probably unless we have something that is perfectly stable, it's not really then necessary to demo it or to add it. And like what I was wondering about this series, like is about do we want to show what we are doing on MOC clusters, which is the official way of building the OKD release in order to publish it, or do we want to focus more on how to run, say, the build pipelines on any any Kubernetes distributions, so that community users can play around with building their own OKD?
I think more the former, because really what we're trying to do is, for now anyway, give people the tools to understand how OKD becomes OKD so that they can better participate in the community in terms of providing assistance to each other, writing documentation, helping contribute to the project, etc. So I would say the former, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you are interested in doing a video on that, I don't want to speak for the group. What does the group think? I think it's a great idea, but
we did something with Alessandro, Christian, and Timothy at the DEF Conf. It's probably something that has already evolved since we did that talk, but I can share it with you guys so that you can see what we presented, and if at least some part of it may fit the needs of this video series.
sure. Or we can make suggestions on this and building on, take the outline of it and then maybe build on it or something. Yeah. Would you be interested in recording a fresh one with some suggestions and some to cover some of the cover how it is now as opposed to back then?
Sure.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, if you could drop the link in the in that item, so OKD Foundation's video series number 38.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. All right, Brian, you were going to say something. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I was just going to agree with Shireen. I think it's another aspect that if we can enable people to go and experiment and create their own builds, I think that's also a very, very valuable aspect to the community, where we can sort of say people can experiment, they can create their own builds, they can include their own sort of modifications. I think that's also a very valuable activity, because it will help people sort of spark sort of innovation around OKD, because I think majority just consume, and I think we're very keen as well to allow people to innovate on the base platform. So having the ability to go and create your own custom version, I think would be very useful.
And that factors into the desire to have it like stable, right? To be at a stable point, to be able to show people.
And having the pipeline that is outside of Pro is, I think, the thing that unlocks that, because up to now, it took quite a lot to actually be able to figure out how to create a build and how to create a release. Where I think now that we've got the pipeline, everything's in the public domain, everything's available, and we probably just need some pointers in terms of how to put it all together to create your own instance of that pipeline.
Yeah, good point. I think that was the whole objective when we started. We were looking at the FCOS Jenkins pipeline when we looked at let's see how we're going to do this, and you know, Alex and myself in a previous company, we worked extensively on Tecton. So we said, let's see if we can get Tecton to work, and better still, how about getting Kubernetes in Docker, you know, running on your laptop, and see if we could build an SCOS there. And that's the power of this. And I think the more we show people how you don't need a 75,000 cluster server to build this, you need a simple setup on your laptop, follow these instructions, and you're good to go. And I think that's the power of this. And you're 100% right, Brian. To get the community to understand that we don't need Pro, I think is a really powerful thing. Obviously, it has its strengths, but the thing is, it's behind a firewall. It's very embedded in Red Hat culture and hard to get at. And it's even hard for us to play around with it.
Excellent. Very cool. Oh, and Christian did at the last meeting say that he is still going to record the videos for us, because he was giving presentations internally in Red Hat, and that he was going to record that and then also record a fresh one for us for the stuff that he volunteered for this. So that's the OKD on FCOS build modifications. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, please add any comments to this item. I want to do 30 minutes so that we have time to talk about operators and stuff. So let's look at, so it sounds like we're good for ignition, butane, FCOS, and SCOS. Sounds like we've got that covered.
Yeah.
Here's the video. I did comment just earlier today. Here's the video that Brendan Shepard did that he happened to be doing an MCO based video anyway, like, and offered for us to either use this or he would record a new one if we had suggestions. So if folks could look at this over the next like 2 weeks, and you know, come back to the group and say, do you think this covers everything we need for MCO, or do we want to ask Brendan to record a new one? His videos are very professional. and he's got a great manner of speakings, and he's offering to do this, and that would be, I think, fantastic to cover the MCO stuff. So maybe as a task for us all, I haven't had a chance to watch it all the way through yet, his MCO one, but I've watched his other ones and they're really good. So it's a task for all of us, watch the MCO video, or at least breeze through it a little bit and see if it covers what we need, what we want. And if not, then when we come back in 2 weeks, let's talk about what we would want the MC101 to cover. Does that sound legit? Does that work? Okay.
Yep.
So, that's cool.
That's good.
All right. Oh, and so there's the blog post. We talked about that a little bit. A couple of folks did put merge requests on it to tweak it a little bit. If you get a chance, look at this as well. It's already been posted, but that doesn't mean we can't make changes. If there's anything there that doesn't jive or that can be stated more elegantly or more effectively, you know, put in a merge request on it, and then we can tweak this, because, you know, blog posts, people really rely on blog posts to help them understand stuff, right? Even more so, I think, than video. When someone does a web search for, you know, OKD and CI/CD or something like that, this is going to pop up. So, yeah, okay. Anything else on the video series? Does that seem pretty? Does that cover everything? And then we just need to do our work, get that done. So Bruce and Elmiko and myself will need to do troubleshooting essentials video sometime, probably in the next couple of weeks. And I think that's all of them. And Andrea is doing the installation options for the different types of installations. All right. Moving on now to operators. So Brian, do you want to recap what we talked about last week, so to give folks set the stage for folks that weren't there?
Yes, certainly. So I've been sort of digging through the operators, trying to get my head around what a pipeline needs to do. At the work group last week, we had a conversation around whether we should align operators in the OKD catalog with the OCP catalog. And the challenge with that is that much of the information needed to be able to do that is within the registration sort of paywall within Red Hat. The information, for example, they don't tag within the public GitHubs when a release is and what versions form everything. So to actually find out the commit boundaries that went into a specific operator that has a tag of a version number in the operator hub catalog, that is actually within the entitled content of OpenShift. It's not within the open source domain. So there is a problem with trying to get that one-on-one alignment. And the recommendation is that we don't try and do that, because there doesn't seem to be a legal way that we could do that without accessing this entitled content of OCP. So that was really what the discussion was around last week. Within many of the operator GitHub repos, there are branches per version. So the 4.12 version, the 4.13 version, the 4.14 version. So we should just be able to pick the right branch in the repo for the version that we're targeting. It does suggest that within the pipeline, we have to have the ability to build multiple versions. So we build for example, currently we build the 4.13 version as the current release, but we probably also want to start building the 4.14 version for the development release. So within the pipeline, we would have to be able to accommodate that functionality as well. Since then, I've been doing some experiments. I haven't written anything up yet because I've just been trying to work it out. And the more I look at it, the more little alleys I go down that seem to be sort of like issues. So if I just explain where my head is at the minute in terms of what this pipeline has to do. So when we look at the operators that are there are some operators where what they're installing is in the public domain. So if you look at something like the pipelines operator, what the pipeline operator does is install pipelines. So all of the containers that make up pipelines have to be available in a repo for the operator to work. So that means we, in many cases, we have to build those containers as well, because some of those, like the pipeline containers, are in the entitled registry. So we would have to go and build potentially the pipeline. Other operators like the dev workspace, that the content for that is in key.io. So it's in a public repo. So for that operator, we wouldn't have to build the actual containers for the functionality. So the first thing we've got to do is work out what the operator is going to install, and are those containers available in the public repo, or will we have to build them? Then we've got to go and work out the operator that will actually go and do the install. And then again, we've got a problem of what the version is, because the version that's in the repo could point to a registry that's within an entitled. So how do I map the source code that created the version that the operator points to with a commit within the functionality of the container? So for example, the pipeline functionality container, what version, what commit of that repo do I have to build to match the operator? Are you following me?
Absolutely. This is the problem we have, Brian, is the dependency management.
Yeah.
You could have, like you said, like the GitOps operator or the pipelines operator, fantastic. All the code is there, everything, but then it uses some weird Elasticsearch logging or something like that, which is locked behind, and that's it. That's where the problems are, and then you're stuck.
Yeah. So the way my thinking is working here is, for each operator, we want a control repo that will list the containers that need to be built, and somehow we need to find the commit IDs or the tags that we need to build, that then maps to the operator. And again, what's the commit that we have to do then? And then we have to create the operator bundle, which gives you the upgrade path, effectively, that tree, which we can build, which then links in. So I'm getting the point where I think I understand how all these things work. The challenge we're going to have is, how do we actually work out what all these versions and commit levels are going to be? I'm trying to get it so everything is automatic. I don't want someone to have to go in every week and spend sort of 3 hours trying to test different combinations of git commits and things like that. So I want it to be automatic. So then the next thing I'm looking at is what test functionality is within the repos. So we could literally go and walk back the commit tree until we find one that works, if necessary. I mean, because we're automating it, if it takes 5 hours to run, I don't care, as long as I'm not having to sit in front of it for 5 hours. Yeah. So this is where I am at the minute. So if anyone has a better suggestion.
Yeah. So Brian, you're 100%. This is the big issue that we have. Even when we've created a couple of operators in our team, and so you have to have a really well-defined make file to be able to build it, vendor because usually there's vendoring, and you might disable vendoring, and or the whole pile of nonsense there. Once you've built the binary, then we have to then build the bundles, and then there's also the index. You have to also index this image, and then once you've built the binaries, the bundles, the index, you push it finally into the catalog. But what is great is that most of the repos on the OpenShift that will build these operators have branches that are versioned. So you could go to release 4.13 and you know that you're going to get 4.13, and that's great. I think where the problem might be is if we are working on a live branch like a 4.14 that's been updated daily, there could be breaks there and that could sort of set you off. But if we go back one version, I think in other words, a version that's GA'd, I think we should be safe.
That's what I was going to ask. So, for example, if someone reports a bug on a 4.13, is the 4.13 branch always guaranteed to work, or is that effectively the development branch for fixes for 4.13? So there may be certain commits with a partial fix on, or am I guaranteed that every commit on the 4.13 branch is a tested, known working version for the 4.13 platform?
Yes, if it's GA'd. So in other words, so if the 4.13, you will be guaranteed 4.13 GA will work. And so we have the Z stream releases. And so if we go 4.13.1, 4.13.2, 4.13.3, those have to work, and they have to be fully tested before they are released in a Z stream. So we have that confidence that they are. If that product is GA, that is going to work.
Okay, so you've just brought up another thing. So if you do a fix on 4.13, you create a 4.13.n branch. You don't fix the 4.13 branch.
Yes, so we fix the main branch. So what happens is, let's just say we found a bug on 4.13. We'll work it, we'll push it into our current main branch, which is at the moment 4.14. So we'll take that 4.14, fix this, and then backport it to 4.13. And that backport makes sure that it's almost like a cherry pick. Cherry pick it, put it into 4.13, and then that gets built on our the automatic release pipelines. And it will then say, okay, this is working, everything's good. It's been, obviously, all the QA, all the testing, everything's been verified. And then it gets backported. And then when that merges, it will come out in, let's just say the current 4.13.12 is the current. And the new 4.13.13, the Z stream will be next week. And that will be included in next week's release. So that's how they do it, on a week by week. It's generally week by week.
Okay. Okay, so the pipeline may have to pick the most appropriate branch at any one time.
Yes.
And then is there any such linkage between the operator and the, I don't know, what do you call the thing that the operator installs? It's not an operand, but what are the?
Yeah, it could be an operand.
Well,
no, you're right. You're 100% right, because, for example, we have something like a node observability operator. So the operator is really the bundle. It'll have a controller inside there, and obviously the controller does the reconcile loop, and it might have dependencies. It'll say, okay, for example, I've got to watch a daemon set because we're going to be deploying something on each node, and it calls an operand, and the operand could be an eBPF gatherer. It could be a CPU memory network metrics gatherer, and then dump it to a file. So the operator might install and instantiate an operand, which is another repo. So there is this dependency, and this is something that you have to know. Usually there is a link in the main. The main operator will say, "Oh, I'm going to be using operand ABC."
Okay, so my thought here is that within a Git repo, we want a control or a series of control YAML or JSON files that are going to manage the pipeline build. I don't want to build the logic into the pipeline. I want to have a generic pipeline that will build all operators, but have the control. This is the way I'm thinking about it. Have the control in a version controlled Git repo that says this operator, these are the containers that need to be built. This is the operator that needs to be built. This is the bundle that needs to be built. This is how the index is built, and things like that. So for each operator that we want in the catalog, we're going to have a control file somewhere, which effectively tells the pipeline what it has to do. That's my current thinking of a design, and that's what I'm playing around with. So if anyone thinks that that's the wrong approach,
no, it's 100%. I think you 100% on the right track, and that's what we try to do. I don't know if you looked at the project at all, OKD operator pipeline. That's what we tried to do there. In other words, we made it as generic as possible to build. We tested on a very, very few, I think 3 or 4 operators. Made sure that we could build it. Obviously, it relies on a make file. So the weakness really is the make file.
Yeah,
but once you have it,
oh,
sorry, go.
No, I was going to say I looked at that, but that assumes that the target containers are already available. So it doesn't look down to say what are the containers that this operator is going to install, not the operator containers, but the actual end result operators like the database containers or the pipeline containers or the Argo CD containers. It doesn't.
Yes, it will have. It will say, okay, for example, this one says, I have a reliance or a dependency on an agent that needs to be deployed, and that you can, as Shireen mentioned in the chat, there's the cluster service version, and inside there you'd have links, and generally in the CRD they could have like an agent name of the agent file that you could pick up there, and you can say, oh, I have a dependency on this project, so before I build this I need to build that project. So you could get that information from there. Okay. But you're right, though. It's not as straightforward. I mean, the Tecton. I mean, I had a look at the Tecton project. It's really
I
ugly.
look at that.
It's ugly. It's really ugly. There's just so many things happening, and it becomes really difficult.
Well, I think the OpenShift one calls the community one, then applies some patches, and then does some other things. And then you look at it, and there's about 12 containers it points to that are within inside the Red Hat registry. And I'm just like, whoa. Yeah. Sorry, Jamie, while we're doing this, can you capture the chat? Because there's some useful links in the chat that we probably want to put in HackMD.
Yeah, I'm actually just about to do that as we speak. I'm actually going to, well, I'm doing two. Well, yeah, why don't, let me copy and paste these. And then I was actually going to screen share for purposes of our folks that are. Hold on one second here.
Sorry, everybody else, if you're not following this, but
yeah, let's give me 1 second.
Weeds of how to build operators.
Yeah, let me do this. Okay, so now that's there, and then hold on one more here. Just to catch the top level of it. Okay, and then I want to go back to sharing my screen and like this, and okay, now we go here. So, okay, Shireen, you want to walk us through this?
Sure. Okay, let me see. So this kind of describes the operator, right? So so you get things like a description, you get base 64 for an icon for the operator, you get the RBAC that the operator will use. Here what you're seeing is examples of the custom resources that the operator knows how to deal with. Later you will see here, this is for example the description, so this is what will pop up in the console when you look at it. What you're seeing here is a bunch of labels that will be later used by OLM in order to say, can I not install this operator? How do I upgrade it? Stuff like that. What you see afterwards in the spec, I think at some point you will be able to see the deployment of the operator. So you will be able to see, okay, so what we see here, this is the custom resource definition. Like what is an Elasticsearch cluster instance? But let's scroll down a little bit further. At some point, still more. Let me see. I was there a while ago, and I stopped the page. You will see. So this is still the custom resource
There's a
definition.
reliance on Kibana there, if you see.
Yeah.
There's a Kibana instance.
If you control find deployments, we will be able to scroll to the part where it kind of describes what is this operator and what do I need to deploy to the cluster in order for it to work. Yes, one more. No, still more. Still more. Here, I think that's the one that we want. Yeah, so you see the section that is just above line 569. This is a deployment of the pod. So this says, if you scroll a little bit up, we'll see the name of the container. So here we have the Elasticsearch operator latest that is being deployed, and we'll see all of the images that are needed. Okay, so that's how OLM knows what needs to be deployed in the Elasticsearch operator namespace so that the operator can do its job. Right, so it's just a concatenation of a bunch of Kubernetes manifests. You'll even find all the roles.
Before you move on, Shireen, can I just so one of the things I was actually talking about before was, so if you look at the images, you'll see that they're all in key.io, which means they're public.
Yes.
For some operators, that's in the Red Hat registry, which is not public, which means that we would have to then build the container.
Correct.
And the challenge that we have is, if you look at the one that's highlighted, that's version 6.8.1. The repos aren't often tagged to say what is the commit in the repo that built that container, which in itself can be a challenge to work out where the repo is that built that container and where the commit that equates to version 6.8.1. So these are some of the challenges, because we've got to then get our pipeline to build these as part of the operator build job as well. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. It's not at all easy. So the section that probably is the most relevant to what you're trying to do is a section here that will be called related images. So here what we're seeing is the deployment, but you have another section there that's called related images. And the related images section just says, this is the list of all the images that I need in order for this operator to work. I don't remember if in this cluster service version file we can also find the dependencies. Do you remember, Luigi, if the dependencies are also included in here.
No, I think it's only in the related images.
Yeah,
Um,
like GVK. Do we have a GVK in here at all?
don't,
No.
yeah. Actually, to
The
be honest, there are not many
GVK.
operators that have the GVK. I actually counted it. I think in our whole catalog, there's only 8 operators that have a GVK dependency.
Okay. So
Yeah.
when we say GVK, just for you guys to know, in some cases, let's say Elasticsearch, or could be maybe an example. Say Elasticsearch operator absolutely needs, actually Elasticsearch no, but maybe if we take Prometheus and Grafana and stuff. Say that Prometheus needs to have a Grafana. It's not a real case, but just imagine for a second that in order for Prometheus operator to work properly on a cluster, it needs a Grafana operator to be installed, and we need that Grafana operator to be respecting a certain version range. That information will also be included somewhere in one of those. I think it's also in the cluster service version. Now, as Luigi is explaining, usually operators are standalone and we don't have that type of situation, but it can happen. So it can happen that an operator explicitly says in its cluster service version, I need that other operator to be installed on the cluster, or otherwise I need this cluster to understand custom resource so and so. So for example, say we're talking about I don't know, pipelines and pipeline runs and tecton events and stuff like that. Like say you're installing an operator and you for pipelines operators, and that operator might say, but I need another operator to provide me with tecton triggers. So tecton trigger custom resource needs to be available on that cluster so that the pipelines operators can be installed.
But would an example of this in OCP land be OpenShift logging and the need for the Elasticsearch operator?
Yeah.
There's the OpenShift logging operator, and then it requires the Elasticsearch operator. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's a much better example. Thank you.
Yeah, and so to Brian's point, so from a community perspective, some of this stuff is locked behind, the Red Hat infrastructure, and you won't be, because, like, for example, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, the 3-scale operator is a good one. 3-scale operator, you won't be able to get. And we have access to that information. We've got the Git hash that the commit, the build was, because we can access that Red Hat operator index image. But it doesn't help us from a community perspective. And I think that's where the disconnect is. And I'm also trying to think how we're going to be able to do something like that. If somebody wanted to use the 3-scale operator in OKD land, how would they do it? It's going to be really, really difficult.
Yeah. Can we start really small and just say and basically have a tool that scans looking for something that's not in Quay or Key, depending on your pronunciation? Can we have just something that an initial pipeline that runs that says, okay, this is something that's not in a publicly accessible, like it could try pulling the image, and if it can't pull the image, flag that, and then at least this way we have a quick way of checking if this is something that needs some hand holding to build. That might be a way to at least automate this process to at least get us started in identifying the ones that are not available.
I have a question. is the validated patterns, does that run off of an operator?
I don't know.
I didn't understand the question.
I did.
In OpenShift, they coming out with this thing called validated patterns, where I believe the scheduler is responsible for scheduling, for always checking on something, but they have something that is kind of like AI-ish, and it's doing the scheduler's job, and it's kind of like it's kind of like giving, if the scheduler, it's kind of like doing the scheduler's job, but it's trying to be more efficient than the scheduler. And I saw that we had it in OKD
must
as
be
well.
honest, I don't know if that. Yeah, sorry, Dwayne. I don't know if this is an operator or not. I must be honest. It's the first time I've seen this, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not something I've looked at yet. So I'm just trying to get the basic ones that we identified. Unfortunately, the Tecton is one of them. Pipelines is one of them.
Yeah, for me, the two big ones are the Argo CD GitOps and then the pipelines, and they're really difficult.
I also
Tecton is a monster. Oh.
I also want ODF to add buckets, object store.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they're not easy, but so if anybody wants to work with me on any of this, please shout up, but what I'm doing is I'm just doing some skunk work, little projects at home, just trying to work through some of these issues and working out. But the idea is that for each operator, we'll add them to the catalog one by one, but we have to work out all of these issues and come up with a config file that we can then just create that will capture all of this, that the pipeline can then understand.
Can we do some low-hanging fruit and just get a couple knocked out that we know are all available images, just so that we get a rhythm going?
So that's the plan, but what I wanted to do was at least have enough of the infrastructure understood. So what we don't have to do is throw everything away and redesign it when we get to something that's not simple. So as I said, I created a repo and did the simple one, which was the dev workspaces for code-ready containers. So I've got that working it's just as a manual step. But then what you're coming against is all of these complex ones, and I just want to have at least understand what the pipeline sort of going to have to do, so I don't get to the position where we release something and then it's all got to be thrown away and re-implemented because it can't handle. So yeah, that's where I am at the minute. Okay.
Well, we're right at about time. We got about a minute left. I just want to be mindful of everyone's time. This was great, super helpful, Luigi and Shireen. Super, super, super helpful to really lay things out and walk us through it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Brian, would it help if we could give you a list of operators that are sitting in the Red Hat index? In other words, there are subscriptions. You can't get them. And give you a list and see which ones we could maybe, like from a low-hanging fruit type of thing, like AMQ streams, for example.
Oh yeah.
I know Kafka is a big one, and I've done a lot of projects with Kafka.
I mean, I do have access to, through work, I do have access to OCP, so I can I can look at them, but I'm just very, very aware that I don't want to put anything that's behind the registration into the public domain by sort of pinching it from there. So I'm trying to be very, very clean, but I'm not going to pull anything from an OCP registration and embed it within a cluster, because A, it's going to get out of date very quickly, but B, we need this to be an automated continual update type process that can't rely on that. So yeah.
No, absolutely. But so my thinking was, and I'm taking AMQ because it's a AMQ streams Kafka. It's a selfish one because it's something that I use and I work with a lot. And maybe going straight to the repos, looking at what are the supported repos that are needed, and build it from scratch for OKD.
Okay, yeah, that would be very useful.
Yeah. All right, let's pick this up at the next meeting. I did have one thing I wanted to ask real quick. We haven't taken a break this year. It's summertime. Do folks want to take a week off so that basically this it ends up being a month from now that we would meet? Or are folks comfortable just working through August?
Yeah, I would lift my hand up and say, please, could we have a break, because I'm going to be helping family move in August, and so it's back and forth from one country to the next country. So
Oh wow, helping move country to country. Okay.
Yeah. Well, from Ireland to the UK, that type of thing. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Shireen, do you have any thoughts?
I had my vacation already. I'm off also during the month of August for a couple of days, but otherwise I'm here. So I'm happy to do as you guys prefer, and to take that time off whenever is best for everybody else.
Brian, what do you think?
Like Shireen, I've had a week off that I was planning in summer. If we actually ever get a heat wave here in the UK, the rest of Europe is cooking.
Yeah.
We are having one of our damper, cooler summers so far. If we ever get some sunshine, I might take some days off and go sit on a beach for a day. But if people want to sort of identify a fortnight or 2 weeks as a sort of a break, I'm happy for that. Otherwise, I'm going to be here and work through.
So could we take that would mean skipping the 8th, and then we would come back on the 22nd if we do the next meeting. Does that work for you, Luigi, or would you rather have the 22nd, August 22nd?
Yes, so I'll be. So it's basically the last 3 weeks in August that's going to be a bit up and down for me. So yeah, but if that works for everyone, I'm happy to.
So I need to take a break, and I actually taking a vacation with my son at some point towards the end of August. So how about we skip the 22nd? Does that work for everyone? So in this way, we can meet on the 8th, keep the momentum that we have going, and then skip the 22nd and give everyone a breather before we head into September. Does that work?
Cool.
All right. Cool.
So are we going to take the 22nd and 28th off?
Yeah, I think so. Let's do both. Let's do both meetings. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. 22nd and 29th, cancel those and then come back in September.
All right. Cool. Well, thanks for going over, folks, and thanks for the awesome discussion. And I'll get this video posted ASAP so that the community can watch and learn from it, because there's a lot of great nuggets in here. So, all right. See you.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.